Whoa! This fried chicken is absolutely amazing!
I'm so glad you like it!
It's moist and well seasoned on the inside, while expertly crispy on the outside, giving you a satisfying mix of textures and pleasing the palate.
Stop analyzing dinner, you freak! Your mumbling's ruining the taste of my Mapo Tofu!
Hello there, welcome back to another episode of Anime with Alvin, where today we'll be making the Mapo Tofu from My Hero Academia. And this dish is quite special to me because 1, I'm Chinese, and 2, my mom's side of the family hails from Chengdu, which is the heart of Sichuan cuisine, as many people might say. Now, in a good Mapo Tofu, you should be able to see whole chunks of unbroken tofu, lots of chilies and spices, and just an overall good spicy numbing satisfaction from the dish. Now let's see if I can do that.
I want to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this episode and supporting the BCU from the very beginning. I'm excited to announce my new website, babi.sh, or as I like to call it, babby.sh. The ultimate destination for all things BCU. There's all the recipes from my videos, exclusive new recipes. You can search by genre or ingredient. You can even toggle between US and metric and scale the serving size. We heard your feedback about everything you wanted from the site, so that's what we did. You can get 10% off your first Squarespace order by visiting squarespace.com/babish.
Alright, let's get started. Now, a key signature element of Sichuan cuisine is that it is very spicy and numbing, which means we're gonna have to use some chilies and Sichuan peppercorns. And I'm going to be using a combination of Chef Wang Gang's recipe and my family recipe passed down from my grandpa and my mom. So, first we're going to heat up a 1/4 cup of vegetable oil in a little saucepan, and then we're gonna essentially toast and fry 10 grams of dried red chilies and 5 grams of green Sichuan peppercorns. These are going to sort of toast and fry until they're aromatic. Be careful though, because if the heat is too high, these chilies can instantly burn, and so can those peppercorns. So I underestimated the power of our fire today. So yeah, burn these. That's no good. We're gonna restart and do that thing again, but this time on a more controlled heat until we can see the aromas start to come around. When they're done, the chili should be a nice bright red and it should smell aromatic, not burnt, because if that's burnt, it's not gonna be good later. Once that's done, that's going to go into a bowl. We're gonna set this aside for later. Then we're gonna prepare some of our vegetables, which this dish is just mostly aromatics. I'm gonna thinly slice 1 inch of ginger into little shreds with a cleaver, and I'm also going to thinly slice some scallions as well. These are going to be the garnish for the dish at the very end. Then I want to slice a pound of firm tofu blocks into roughly 3/4 of an inch cubes. For this dish, firm tofu is recommended. If it's soft, it's going to break a little too easily, and it won't be able to absorb a lot of the flavors that we want in this dish. Once those are ready, now we're gonna take the toasted chili and Sichuan peppercorn mixture that we fried earlier, and then taking a trick from Wang Gang's book, I'm gonna go ahead and crush these with the back of the cleaver. These are going to essentially release a lot of those aromatic compounds, and once those are crushed, then we can finally chop them into little bits. We essentially wanna make like a nice little toasted chili and peppercorn powder that we're gonna use as a flavor bomb in our dish. This smells really good. Surprisingly, it doesn't smell super spicy like you might think. It smells really flowery and fragrant and aromatic. I think that's because of those nice green peppercorns rather than the black ones. And a bowl of Mapo Tofu is not complete without a good bowl of rice. So we're gonna take some short grain rice and just put that in a rice cooker, but first we must wash it. I like to do 3 to 4 rinses until the water runs basically clear. And then we're just gonna add enough water until you can measure approximately 1/2 inch above the rice for the water level, and hit the cook button for the rice cooker because it knows how to cook rice better than anybody else in the world, except my grandma. Alright, now we're gonna go outside to cook this dish in a wok like a proper Chinese person would. We're gonna give a good healthy amount of water to the wok first, gonna heat that up and add in a little bit of salt. This is essentially going to be a little bit of salty hot water that we're going to be boiling so that we can blanch our firm tofu cubes for 2 minutes or so. We don't want to overcook them, but we do need to be able to cook them just a little bit to set their shape, because that way they won't break in the Mapo Tofu. And broken tofu is a no-no for this dish. Alright, once that's done and the tofu has been evicted and is set to drain, and the water has also been evicted, we're going to give this wok a healthy amount of oil, probably 1/2 cup or so. This oil is not only going to season and help make sure the sides of the wok don't stick that much, but is also going to make sure that we can evenly stir fry things on a very high heat. Now, Mapo Tofu can be made with different kinds of meat, but I like using beef, and I like meat, so I'm actually going to add a lot more than what you might find in a traditional version of this dish. I'm going to go in with a whole pound of beef, because I really like beef in this, but you probably don't need to use that much. You can probably also use pork, and I've seen some people use lamb. Just going to make sure to stir fry this until the beef has turned into little bits. I don't want any huge lumps in there. I'm looking for some browning, some nice crispy bits on the edges of the wok as well. Once that's ready to go, then I'm gonna add in some pickled red chilies, 6 of them that have been chopped up, and then I'm gonna throw in our thinly sliced ginger, a tablespoon of fermented black beans, which is a very popular Chinese seasoning ingredient you can also find at the Asian grocery store. And then I'm going to add in 2 tablespoons of douban jiang, essentially like a fermented chili bean sauce, which again you could probably find in an Asian grocery store. This stuff is just chock full of flavor and is going to create a base seasoning that'll make this dish taste the way it is. Once that's all stir fried together and starting to look pretty good, then I'm going to add in a pretty generous amount of that toasted chili peppercorn powder we made from earlier. Now in the show, Bakugo does like his Mapo Tofu pretty spicy, so I'm going to add in probably 4 heaping tablespoons of this. If you really like your spice and numminess and you're a fiend for that kind of stuff, you can add more. Just save a little bit for the end too. Even though we added a good amount of oil in the beginning, this does lack a little bit of oil, so I'm going to add a little bit more. And once the flavor and color of the chilies have started to come out and you see a beautiful red oil, which is a pretty well-known staple of a lot of good Chinese cuisine, then I'm going to add 2 cups of water. And this is going to create a little broth that we can now add our tofu into. To season, I'm adding in salt, sugar, and MSG in a 1:1:1 ratio. So I don't really have an exact measurement because my grandpa always just used a little spoon and kind of threw a couple of those in. I don't think he measured either. Once the tofu has been added, I'm going to go ahead and give this broth a taste. Okay, I think this needs a little bit more sugar and MSG. I'm gonna adjust that for a little bit. This does need to simmer on somewhat of a medium to low heat, just so that the tofu has enough heat to expand and absorb those beautiful juices, but doesn't have a roiling boil that'll actually physically break the tofu into little pieces. This step takes about 3 to 4 minutes or so. Once the time has passed, we're going to make a little cornstarch slurry on the side with a 1:1 ratio of cornstarch and cold water. And now this part is very interesting that Chef Wang Gang showed me. He adds the cornstarch slurry in 3 additions, increasing in thickness every time. Now the way he does this is I think he lets the cornstarch sort of settle to the bottom, and he sort of adds in more and more of that bottom part to the water when he adds it in. He says that every time it should be thicker so you can kind of control the end thickness. I think if you add it in all at once, it might clump a little bit. So he likes to do it in little stages, and I will also follow this instruction. I also think this is important because this isn't traditional stir frying. The goal here is that you shouldn't break the tofu, but in a lot of stir frying, there's a lot of vigorous momentum that you can use to incorporate the slurry so that everything is coated. But here, you can't really do that because if you just dumped it all in, you would need to mix it pretty heavily to incorporate that all before it clumps in one corner, and that would break a lot of the tofu. So I'm kind of getting a sense of why this technique is used for this dish. Once the slurry has tightened up the dish, this definitely looks like a pretty good Mapo Tofu to me. And now we are ready to go inside. All right, once we are inside, I'm gonna go ahead and plate this up into a serving dish and finish this with a little bit more of that chili peppercorn powder on top, both for color and for flavor. And once our scallions have been sprinkled on top as a nice garnish, this is our version of Mapo Tofu from My Hero Academia, a hybrid recipe of Chef Wang Gang's Mapo Tofu and my family recipe from my mom and my grandpa. And this is a pretty special one because growing up, I was never the one cooking Chinese food. I was always watching my mom make it, so to be able to make that for myself is pretty satisfying. And if you have good Mapo Tofu, you must eat it with a good bowl of steamed rice. And that is exactly what we're going to do. Keep that on top, take a good look at it, and go right in. Yeah, that is pretty good. Tastes very close to what my mom and my grandpa used to make. I think they would be proud. The spice, the numbness is there. It has a nice sharpness from all those flavors we added in, and it's not too spicy, but you could definitely feel it starting to fill up your face. Everybody in the studio was able to try it, and I think they liked it as well. But no matter how many people were able to come down and take a bite, I made a lot, and there's inevitably going to be some leftover Mapo Tofu the next day. And now you could definitely just reheat it and then eat it as is, but I like to do something cool with it that I thought you guys might want to see. So let's just pretend this is the next day. I'm going to take my leftover Mapo Tofu, put a good spoonful of that into a little pot, add in half a cup of water until it almost looks like a broth or a soup. And then I'm going to add in 2 curry cubes. These are Japanese curry cubes that I usually have on hand, whether to make curry or whether to make fun stuff like this. I'm essentially going to simmer that and turn this into a boil until the roux thickens, and essentially I've made a Mapo curry. And then in a little non-stick skillet, I'm gonna take a little bit of that red chili oil from the leftover Mapo Tofu and then use that to fry up a sunny side egg. Pretty simple, nothing crazy, but that's gonna add a little bit of extra flavor than using regular oil. Then I'm gonna take an instant ramen packet that I probably have lying around in the cupboard, it doesn't matter what flavor, cook that according to package instructions, and then I'm gonna drain the water, put the noodles in a bowl, and add the seasoning in there. Then after giving that a mix and now the seasoning is incorporated, I'm gonna add that Mapo curry right on top of those noodles. Then the egg goes on, followed by a little drizzle of leftover chili oil from the dish and a finish of scallions. And I present to you my version of Mapo curry noodles, a Chinese-Japanese dish that is somewhat popular in certain regions of Asia and definitely popular in my house because I like that one. To eat this, I like to break the yolk, give this a really good mix of the egg yolk, the egg white, the scallions, all that curry can mix together with the noodles and eat as if nobody is watching. Now this is wonderful. Mapo Tofu is a really great dish by itself with rice, but what's really cool about this is that the curry and the noodles and the egg kind of fills in the gaps at what the Mapo Tofu doesn't have in terms of flavor. It adds sugar, it adds sweetness, it adds a little mellowness, it kind of dilutes it but uses its best flavors in a way to make a dish that you can't stop eating. It's a very comforting thing that's good for someone who doesn't have a huge spice tolerance like me, and judging by how popular it was in the studio, there was no more left, but we did have some leftover Mapo Tofu, and rest assured, everybody was able to take some of that home with the rest of the rice. Now the one downside of eating something that's really heavy on Sichuan peppercorns is that kind of makes your mouth feel weird, and yeah, water tastes kind of funny now. It's probably gonna taste weird for the next 2 hours, so I'm gonna go figure that out.
Thanks again to Squarespace for sponsoring today's episode. From websites to online stores to domains to analytics, Squarespace is the all-in-one platform for you to build your online presence. All of my websites over the years have been with Squarespace, and I'm excited to share the new one, babi.sh. We were able to use Squarespace's website builder and custom integrations to create a site that provides a powerful cooking experience. If you want to try Squarespace for yourself, you can start your free trial today by visiting squarespace.com/babish to get 10% off your first purchase.